but the biggest shareholders of the bank are the cooperative societies. So as you know, cooperative bank was mainly formed by the various cooperative society movements which came together and formed the bank, and that's why even from the presentation you can see they are the biggest shareholders. The bank has various subsidiaries, which includes the COP South Sudan. We have the COP Consultancy, the COP Trust Investment, Kingdom Security, Kingdom Bank, and the CSC Bank, and also COP Bank Fleet Africa. So these are the various subsidiary which are together they have formed the cooperative bank group. Next slide. So as a bank, we have a presence all over the country. We have 184 branches throughout the various corners and counties of this country. So you are able, wherever you are, when you have visited the country, you can be able to access the bank, or you can be able to visit the branch. We also have various ATMs. We have various points which we call the COP kwa jirani agents. These are agents where you can also be able to access COP services. Let's say when the branch is not opened. We also have a 24 contact center where, in case of anything, you can always call us and we'll be able to be assisted at any one time. Also, we have the various circles, or the circles front offices. These are also the various circles that have that are also customers of the bank. Also, as a bank, we also have internet banking, where you're able to access your accounts. Once you have an account with us, you'll be able to access our services anytime and all over the world. Next slide. So as a bank, these are the various awards that we have won for the last few years. And from this is just to show that the bank is well known and well presented. From this, you can see the various awards that as a bank we have won. This includes the African Banker Awards, that's 2022. The digital bank, one of the best digital bank in digital banking, and also our CEO is recognized as one of the best CEO in Africa. Next slide, please. This also our other various awards. Most recent one is being the most innovative bank. Also the best in financing commercial clients. Also best in sustainable financing, and also best in COVID-19 response, and also best in financing MSME. So these are just show that the bank is well recognized and is well known. And from this also you can see that the bank is quite a strong bank, and it's well known and recognized not only in Kenya but all over the African globally. So our promise as a bank is to always enhance our diaspora client experience, and also we continually collaborate with all our clients with a vision to offer solutions that are aligned to meeting your needs and experience. Our innovative solutions are geared towards ensuring automation, efficiency, cash flow management, effective service delivery, multiple and digital banking option, and convenience in your operations. So I know most of our clients can attest to this, that we have been able to maintain this promise by ensuring that we offer you the best services, especially for our diaspora clients out there. I know most people out there, they know Cooperative Bank is one of the bank in terms of diaspora banking offering, and we continue to offer that. And We always ask you as our clients to talk to us, so that in case or anything that you would want us even to improve much more, we always welcome you to talk to us. So we promise to, as a bank, to continue offering you the best services. So for diaspora banking is one of the department in retail banking division. We are mandated to offer various services to our clients who are based outside there, all over the world. So as a department, we have different services, different products. This starts from you having an account with us, which I know most of you have, and those who do not have, we always request you to talk to us, and we'll be able to start the journey. So for our accounts, we have different types of accounts. This include Kenya shillings, USD, GBP, and Euro. And our accounts are well known, the diaspora accounts, the Jamhuri accounts, which you can be able to open not only when you are in the country, but anytime you can be able to open. Just you just need to talk to us, and then from the emails, we're able to send you the documentation, and also you can do it online, and we're able to open the accounts for you. So that's where we start the journey of joining us, and we're able to offer you those accounts. Apart from that, we have also loan facilities. We do offer mortgage facilities for our diaspora clients in different currencies. This include Kenya shillings, USD, GBP, and the various loans that we offer include plot purchase, construction, straight purchase. This where you want to buy a house, you want to buy a commercial house, a residential house. We are able to facilitate you on that. And I know most of you out there, they have been able to benefit from this, and we continue offering these products to you, so that you are able even to develop yourself even when you're out there. Apart from that, we also have other products such as insurance services. So in case wherever either when you are in the country or outside the country, we're able to offer these insurance services, which include the life insurance, the funeral cover, return ticket, home insurance, things like also like say you motor vehicle insurance. So in case you need any of this insurance, you just need to talk to us, and we be able to offer you both for you out there, and also for your family members back here. Also, as a bank, we have different investment options for you, which enables you to ensure that your money doesn't just sit here, you earn something from it. This include the call deposits, the fixed deposit, mutual funds, shares, treasury bills, as well as bonds. So these are the various ways where you can invest your money. Uh, you can be able to invest your money, and your money will earn interest. So depending on your risk appetite, just talk to us, and we'll be able to guide you the best option that you can be able to have. Apart from that, also for our accounts, they come with online banking. We have one of the most strong and also most efficient online banking, where you once you log in, you're able to view your accounts, you're able to do transactions. So for our accounts comes with online banking. So once you open the account, you automatically qualify, or we automatically onboard you on the online banking, where you're able to access your account anytime. Also, for Kenya shillings accounts, we have a Visa debit card, where you're able to access funds using the debit card all over the world. So once you open the account, in case you would want to have a card, we do have that option, where we can be able to issue you with their card. Even when you're outside the country, we can be able to process the card and also send it to you wherever you are. Apart from that, the bank has partnered with various money transfer organization, which enables our clients all over the world to be able to remit back funds to your accounts. We know that our diaspora clients or our diaspora Kenyans are currently the main source of foreign currency, and this the bank has recognized that, and that's why we have partnered with these money transfer organizations, which now enables you to send your money directly to your account here in Cooperative Bank, and also sending money even to your relatives. So this what that means is that, let's say wherever you are, you want to send money. I know in US most of you use the Wild Remit, Sendwave. We also have right now we have other money transfer organizations such as Remitly, TapTap, all those money transfer organizations. We are partnered with them so that they can make it easy for you to transfer money back. And in case of any challenge, since these are our partners, you can always contact us and we'll be able to assist you in case you have any challenge in doing your transactions. So I think this is just the beginning of our conversation. We have the main topic, understanding the legal process in property, in having or in owning your property in our country. So I request you to be with us all the way to the end, and in case of anything, kindly chat, put any question on our chat platform. Thank you very much. Back to you, Beatrice.
Thank you, John, for that brief on diaspora banking product offering. As you've seen, your interests, whether you're coming as an individual, as a group, or as a circle, your interests are well taken care of. And the main topic for the day is on legal processing, the process of acquiring property legally properties back here, and that falls under our loans, and that's why we got product experts for this field, and that is MMW Advocates LLP. And now, without further ado, I will request Stella's team. I'm not sure whether I've seen Stella in the meeting, but MMW Advocates is well represented. Karibu, I think Melissa or Ian, Karibu Sana, so that you can introduce your team and take us through what we have for the day.
Thank you so much, Beatrice and the team at Cooperative. Good evening. Actually, I don't know whether it's morning or evening on that end. I think it's evening. Yes, good evening to all of you. My name is Stella Faraguri, and welcome to this exciting session. I am the managing partner at MMW Advocates LLP. We are delighted to have this conversation with you on the process of land ownership. So our goal at the end of this conversation is to ensure that you know what to demand for and what to expect in any land transaction. But before we dive into this session, it is important that I introduce the firm so then you have an inclination as regards who you're dealing with. Okay. Fantastic. It is important that you understand who MMW is. So MMW Advocates LLP is one of Kenya's largest female-led law firms with a focus on positively impacting the commercial ecosystem with out-of-the-box solution. Our mantra is embracing and solving the complex, and what this means for us is that we thrive in solving commercial complexities. MMW Advocates LLP service offering is in helping our clients in all stages of a contract life cycle. And based on that, we have various departments that are tailored to fit the life cycle of a contract. We have the real estate and securities department. This is a department that is going to present to you this entire session and is going to be with you in this session. They're the advocates who help you in the journey of property ownership. They're also the team you interact with when it comes to charging of properties as security, securitization of a loan, and the team prides itself with great networks all over Kenyan Land Registry. And quick turnaround time. One of our wins this year was being one of the firms that have registered over 10 transactions on Athisasa. I see someone has said they would like to see my face. So let me just switch on my video. Am I looking? There we go. There we go. The second department is the commercial department, which is a department that helps businesses from the point of conceptualization, inception, and the maintenance of relationship. And in the event the business does not work, the commercial team ensures that parting of ways between two parties who have contracted is not painful. They deal with negotiations of contractual terms, drafting and review of contracts, and liaising with relevant government agencies to ensure that these contracts are compliant and enforceable. So thirdly, we have the debt collection department, which basically helps organizations in collecting their debts. And then finally, we have the dispute resolution department that handles any disputes flowing from a breach of contract. Our contribution to the commercial industry and ecosystem has not gone unnoticed, and we have won various awards both locally and globally. We have been recognized as top 100 commercial law firm in Kenya, that is in 2023, SME Law Firm of the Year for 2 years running, 2021, 2022, Litigation Law Firm of the Year by the Global Law Experts Awards, Kenya's leading litigation law firm by the International Advisory Experts, and Best Comprehensive Law Firm in the Middle East and Africa by the Middle East and Africa Business Award. So that is a team that you're dealing with. As time goes by, you shall be seeing the faces and interacting with the various people within the team. Now, ordinarily, I'd be wearing a suit now that I've been forced to switch on my video, but it is now 1:54 a.m. So I had to keep warm so that then I can focus on this presentation and not so much how cold it could be. Great. So we could now dive into our presentation. We have the slides up. So what's the topic today? Demystifying the process of property acquisition in Kenya. That is our focus today. Okay. So that is basically the outline. Our conversation is, and I say conversation because I hope we will have a very engaging session where you will actually put in your questions or concerns or issues that you have faced in the process of property ownership. It is very prudent to state at this point that we have done this training with actually a number of people from the diaspora, and we have actually helped them in the process of benefiting or ownership of property, liaising them with or connecting them with people who they need to deal with. And you can reach out to us, particularly if you have any questions or any concerns or in the process of actually owning or disposing a property, you can list down your question. If you could go to the next slide. Great. So when you're purchasing a property, what are the key factors to consider? So the first one is price. And the reason we say price is we understand that when you're in the diaspora, and even when you're here locally and you're purchasing a property, it's important to understand what will it cost me to get this particular property. Yes. What will it cost me to get this particular property? And one of the ways that we actually advise our clients to go around it is, even if you're not in Kenya, you can easily do a desktop research and see property within that particular area. How much does it go for? Is the person or the agent you have told to purchase a property for you, are they actually being truthful when they tell you that a particular property goes for a particular price? And you will see that the issue of price and cost go hand in hand. Why do I say this? Because cost affects your legal fees, cost affects stamp duty as well. So if then you're not cognizant of, if you're just focusing on the issue of price and how much
What
the
are you saying?
How's it moving?
No, it's full. All the seats are full.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I am trying to so that.
Okay, thank you. If you focus on the price, you find a lot of people end up being surprised that there are attendant costs over and above the purchase price. So it's always important to ensure that your pricing and costing are conversations that you're having whenever you're thinking of purchasing a property. Secondly, why are you buying this property? And this actually advises why then invest in that particular piece of property. Are you looking at purchasing the property for purposes of future investment? Are you looking at speculation, or is it for speculative purposes? Are you looking at an agricultural piece of land? So if it's agricultural, then where should it be? If it's residential, where should it be? And how much then should it cost? Does it make sense when you're investing in it? What is your return on investment when you're looking at the purpose? Then you look at the location. Where exactly is this property located? For instance, there are certain zoning areas where you cannot build apartments above a particular size because of the particular zoning regulations in that area. I know all of you may be very aware about riparian land. So you can become very concerned when you're buying property that is likely to be in a riparian area or is also likely to be declared government or public property. If any of you remember what happened with Nakumat Thika Road, I recall, that it all went down purely based on location. So everything was right save for the fact that the location was wrong. So it's very important for you, even when you're purchasing a property, to ensure that you are very keen on where it is located. Then finally, and I think this is the biggest, so last but definitely not least, legitimacy. Who are you purchasing this property from? Are they the actual proprietors of this property? Do they have the key documents so that then you can actually verify that this is the person who is expected, who is required to sell this property to you? So these are, by and large, the things that are meant or factors for you to consider or guide you when you're purchasing your property. So why is this important for you, particularly as people in the diaspora? We have come to realize that 60% of diaspora property purchasers have actually been conned. And we do not want any of you to be a part of this statistic. And why are they conned? One is because they do not look at the things that we've discussed, and also the stakeholders that they deal with. And we shall see this in the next slides. So these are the benefits, of course, of investing in property. It serves as good passive income. It appreciates over time. And this is a known fact all over the world. And also it is very low risk, particularly if you follow the right procedure. If you purchased a property in a particular area, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, you'll find the property there. And it's something you can pass on from one generation to the next generation. So the next slide is on the classification of land in Kenya. So Melissa will take us through this presentation.
Thank you, Stella. So my name is Melissa Kariuki from, I work in the real estate department. I'm a lawyer, and I'll be taking you through the classifications of land. So it's important that at the point of purchasing a property to understand the types of classifications of land you have in Kenya, so that you do not find yourself in a situation where you have bought a property and later on you're being told that this property was belongs to the government, or it had been alienated for purposes of maybe building a school, or maybe that's where a road reserve was supposed to be built by the government. So it's important to understand that in Kenya, land is classified into 3 categories under the Constitution. You have your public land, private land, and community land. So what do we mean when we say land is private land, public land, or community land? So I'll start with public land. So public land is land that is held by the government of Kenya. It could be either at the national level or the county level. So this is land held by state organs, or this is land that contains minerals and oils, land that is occupied by, maybe the government has planted forests, or land that is occupied by water bodies such as rivers, lakes, and yes, and the like. And then you have your community land. So this is land held by a particular community based on their ethnicity or culture. So you can have, for example, the Maasai community owning a particular land where maybe they use it for their pastoralist activities. And so this community land is usually registered on behalf of the community by a group representative. And where community land is not registered, it's usually held by the county government on behalf, in trust of the community. And then you have your private land. So private land is land that is held by individuals, or it could also be legal persons. So a company could own private land. Me and you could also hold private land. So an individual or a company can hold private land in two ways. You can either own land as freehold or as a leasehold. So what do we mean when we say land is, you can own land as a leasehold or freehold? So when you say a person owns land as freehold, this means that they are the absolute owner for life. So this person will own this property, will have the unlimited right to use, to sell this property, and they can pass on to their kids and to their kids and their kids. So it's the property belongs to the person absolutely and for life. But when we talk about leasehold, we mean that this land is held by the government, and then the government leases to you as an individual or a company for a maximum period of 99 years, where upon expiry of the 99 years, the land reverts back to the government, where you have the option of renewing that leasehold property. So what happens if, let's say, a foreigner wants to buy land in Kenya? So foreigners can only buy land as leasehold, so they can only own property for 99 years. And then now they'll have to renew it upon the expiry of 99 years. But a Kenyan citizen can own land in freehold. That means they can own it for life. And to take us through the next phase of what a title deed would look like upon purchasing your property, I'll throw it back to Stella to take us through that part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that. Appreciate it. That now we all know that there are three types of property: public, private, and community land. Now, so you have identified a piece of land, and somebody in the country or an agent or your family member sends you a title. Now, a title perhaps may be a foreign document to some of you, and you may not know exactly what to look out for. So a title deed, every particular property has a title, not even just a title deed, but has a title. The same way every individual has an identification card. And then the same way you have a title number is the same way every individual has an ID number. But just the same way an ID tells you about where this person has come from, their name, even their picture. So this is the same feel and look we should have when we're looking at a title deed or a certificate of lease. Any title document tells you a lot about the particular property. So we'll start with the title deed. When you get a title and it is titled title deed, as we may see here, then you will see certain features that explain to you exactly what this property is about. The first thing you look at is the title number. And from the title number, you will be able to know, even when you're speaking to your surveyor, where exactly is this property located? You're able to know issues to do with the beacons and such like things. And also with the title number, you're actually able to now do your search. As you can see on both the title deed and the certificate of lease, both of them bear that common title number. We can see on the certificate of lease, for instance, this property is Nairobi block 111/1182. The next thing you are going to see is the area. The approximate area means the actual size of this particular property. So that then when you send your surveyor to the ground, if you are told that your particular property is, for instance, 0.0153 hectares, your surveyor should also find not only is the title within that particular, not only is the property within that particular area, according to the registry index map, but also it is actually measuring right around the area that is listed on the title deed or the certificate of lease. Then next you'll see a very slight difference between what is on the title deed and what is on the certificate of lease. Now, for a certificate of lease, this is for properties, as the document says, where it is actually just on leasehold. That is to say, you're holding the property for a particular term. While for a title deed, the property is yours for life. It's a lifetime ownership. And not just your life, but also that of the people you actually bequeath to or sell to. So now I will focus on the certificate of lease. You can see in this instance, like I said, because it is a lease, there's always a lessor and a lessee. So the lessor in this case is Nairobi City Commission. And then you'll see something very interesting with the certificate of lease. It also has a rent amount payable. If you see a particular property has rent, for instance, this is 250 shillings per annum, then it tells you when you're dealing with a purchaser, when you're dealing with a vendor, they should also then be able to explain or give you documents to demonstrate that they have actually been paying rent for the number of years that they've been holding the property. So that then you do not find yourself buying a property that has rent obligation, but the rent has never been paid, and their arrears accruing and accruing and accruing. So yes, you bought a very nice property, but then it has liability. Then, remember we said that certificate of lease, you're holding it as a leasehold. It's a holding on lease for a particular period. So you can see the holding is for 99 years. Then the question you should ask yourself is that how long is that 99 years? What does it mean for you as the new owner of this particular property? And you can see it's 99 years from 1st January 1989. So already quite a number of years have already run. So then you should be able to know how much more time do you have with this property before you go and have it renewed. So for instance, if this property was coming to you closer to the end of the term of this 99 years, it may not be prudent for you to purchase a property, particularly during the period of conversion. Of lapsing of this particular term period. Then, after we've done with that, you've identified it's a leasehold. On this other end, you can see it's a title deed. Obviously, we've said with a title, it's not for a particular term. Then you look at the next issue. Who owns this particular property? And you can see for the certificate of lease, it's owned by Jane Msupa, and the title deed by Robert Mapesa. Now, something that is also very interesting that now our land registries are doing is that they are putting the ID number of the owner. So then what does this mean to you as a purchaser of this property? Is that then you confirm, is this property, the person who is actually selling it to you, say it's Jane Msupa, is her ID number matching the ID that she has issued you? So quite obviously, you now know you'll be asking for the ID. Does it match in terms of the name and in terms of the ID number? Then if we then go and look down, because I'm just trying to show you the things you should be looking out for when dealing with or when you are actually given a particular title. We can see that on the title deed, it's written that this person, Robert Mapesa, is now registered as the absolute proprietor of the land, which then goes to what I was telling you, that this person holds it for eternity. It's a lifetime ownership, as opposed to now, what if you recall, we say that the leasehold is actually for a particular term. And then if you go down, you will then see certain things. And it's a question I keep asking our clients when they tell me that they're purchasing a property, and I ask them, which registry? You are able to then see that when you're purchasing this registry, you're going to be dealing with it from Ruiru. It's going to be the Ruiru District Land Registry that you're dealing with. So if this property title number is Ruiru Q, and at the bottom it's also written Ruiru District Land Registry, you know that at least you're dealing with the right property. But if it's written Ruiru District Land Registry, and title number is written Kajiado, quite obviously there's a mishmash of information there, and that should raise a red flag for you. Then you can say that it is issued on 13th June 2023 to this particular person, John Mapesa. Or if it's, for instance, a company. Why is that date, the date of issuance, important to you as a potential purchaser of this particular property? It's because if, for instance, it's issued to Robert Mapesa, 13th June 2023, and or even let's say it was 1989, and Robert Mapesa was born in 1993, you should be able to ask yourself, how is this possible that this person owns a property or was owning a property way before they were born? If it's a company, how is it that this company, if you look at the CR12, it shows that they were incorporated, let's say in 2023, August, for instance, but the property was issued to them 13th June 2023. Again, another red flag, because the company and the person must have come to existence, and then now they own the property. Next. Again, those are the same details we are seeing in the certificate of lease. So on the property section will basically be a reiteration or a repetition of what we saw on the first particular page, which basically shows who again is a proprietor and what is the description on the property. And you remember we had talked about the nature of the property. So for the title deed, we can see it's written that the title is absolute. Well, for the lease, you'll see that it's written it's leasehold. It should never be the other way around. And if you go to the next slide. So the encumbrance section, a very interesting section for any of you purchasing a property. If you're purchasing a property, then you should look, is this property encumbered or not? Sounds like a big word, perhaps. Simply put, is this property available? Is it available without any liability? That's what encumbrance means. Is there anyone else who owns or has any interest over this property? Ideally, a good property is one that has no encumbrance. But even if it has an encumbrance, because I have seen people who have purchased property that has an encumbrance, it's then very important for you to know who exactly does this proprietor have a liability or who are they liable to? For instance, we can see that in this one, where there's an encumbrance, there's a charge to Cooperative Bank for a sum of Kenya shillings, 2 million. So we can see that in this instance, if you're buying this particular property for say 3 million, and this person took a facility from Cooperative Bank of 2.3 million, and they have not been paying it, chances are you'll be buying a property for 2 or for 3 million, but then you find that there's more liability based on the fact that this person has not been honoring their obligations with the bank. So if you find that a property is actually encumbered or charged, as in this case may be, to a particular bank, one of the questions that you need to find out is how much do they owe the bank? So that then you do not find yourself in a situation where you are actually getting more liability than you ought to. Something else that we have seen in the encumbrance section, because we work for various telecom companies, is that we find that when telecom companies put their masts on a property, it means that they will register their interest on the encumbrance section. So yes, you're buying a property, but also that property has someone else's interest registered there. So it's very good, it's very important to find out, are you buying a property that only you have the ability to use it? Not just in terms of even a facility from a bank, but also in terms of leasehold. We've seen properties where KPLC has actually then decided to register their interest on the encumbrance section. So all these things are things that are very important for you to look out for, so that then you know, am I buying, as we popularly put it, a clean title? Now, once you have done your basic look at exactly what the title looks like, who are you dealing with, which registry, is it the size that you want, is it in the location that you want, You've looked at the price, the person has told you it's 2.3 million or 3 million. You've done your desktop search and you've seen, yes, property in Ruiru is going for 3 million. You are satisfied with that for that particular area. You've also seen the ID, you know you're dealing with the right person. The next issue is now ensuring that you're dealing with the right professionals in this particular conversation. One of the things that we keep telling our diaspora clients is that your family and friends are not stakeholders in the real estate transaction. Why do we say this? And I'm sure even growing up, we saw a lot of this where relatives would send money from the diaspora for purposes of buying a property, developing a property. But a lot of times, those funds were used or misused for other things or misappropriated for other things. Or they find that, yes, the property was purchased, but it was not in their names. So family and friends, as good as they are, unfortunately, they are not professionals in the process or the life cycle of real estate. So who are the professionals then? We have your advocates. Advocates, basically us, as a firm like MMW Advocates LLP, are the people who actually draft your transactions. They're the people who review the terms therein. They help you with the negotiation of the process. But then how do you ensure that the advocates are actually valid and licensed? One of the things that you can easily do is ask for their practicing certificate for that particular year. If they do not have their practicing certificate for that particular year, then it means that that transaction may easily be voided later. So it's very important to check on that. Also, you can always check on the Law Society of Kenya website to check whether that advocate is actually active or inactive. Quite obviously, there's a surveyor, and we mentioned the value of a surveyor, because it is the surveyor who comes in and tells you, I confirm that this property is third row or front row or second row, because we've seen situations where some of our clients thought that they were buying a property that is first row, only for them to find out that the property is actually much further from the road. And ladies and gentlemen, look, it's not easy for you to find out from just looking at the title. We have just looked at the title. There's no way, if you just go back to the slides with the title, there's no way you can look at this certificate of lease written Nairobi Block 111 of 1192 and know whether this property is located on the first row, second row, Kilimani, Kileleshwa. You can't quite tell. And even if I came in and told you this property is this one, there's no way you can tell. So why then do you need a surveyor? To ensure that even when the property is pointed out to you, you're buying the right property in the right location and in the right, with the right area. Okay, so that's why you need your surveyors. Then we have the Land Control Board. The Land Control Board is relevant if you're purchasing a property that is within agricultural land. So with agricultural land, you will always need consent from the Land Control Board. In my view, I find consent from the Land Control Board a very superfluous exercise, and I think it's very outdated, and the courts have been trying to say that, but it doesn't change the fact that the Act provides that you need consent from the Land Control Board when purchasing property within an agricultural area. Then your valuers will come in to value the property, as the word suggests, but they're also the ones, we have the government valuers who come in and tell you that, you know, this property is valued, let's say you're 3 million, and therefore you're expected to pay stamp duty of a particular amount. I'll not say how much stamp duty you ought to be paying. Melissa is meant to deal with that. And then our land registrars, finally. Land registrars are the people who actually then go ahead and do your searches to ensure that you're dealing with that the details on the property match the details that we have at the land registry. And they're the ones who register your transfer, and they're the ones who then proceed to issue with a title. And if you remember, we looked at the title documents. At the bottom, we saw that it was issued by the district land registrar. So we have a case scenario here that is meant to guide you. We're going to talk about our Mr. Robert Mapesa. So Robert Mapesa traveled abroad in 2001 to pursue his master's. He had great success, but now wishes to relocate to Kenya in the next 5 years. Mr. Mapesa has seen through a Facebook group that a 10-acre piece of land is being sold in Ruaka by Kashamba Investments. He wishes to purchase the property and build his retirement home on 3 acres of the land. Remember, we said he sold 10 acres. So he wants to build 3 acres for his retirement. On 3 acres, he wants to build a retirement home. And then on the rest of the property, that's the 7, Mr. Mapesa intends to construct an apartment complex for sale and keep some units for rent. So how do we advise Mr. Robert Mapesa to go about this? There are 3 stages of a real estate transaction that will guide Mr. Robert Mapesa on his transaction. So our Maureen Jero will introduce herself and will take us through, sorry, actually, apologies. It's Edward who is meant to take us through this session.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much for joining us for this training. And at this juncture, we will begin the 3 stages of the real estate transaction. As Stella has alluded, Mr. Mapesa is, and any of you can be Mr. Mapesa in this time, is intending to buy a property in Kenya while abroad. And we will begin with the pre-contractual stage. So at this stage, the key word here is going to be due diligence. Due diligence, due diligence. One, you must understand the value of the property. And in this case, as Stella had said, you can do something we call the desktop search, where you just go online, you Google Ruaka, and you see land being sold in Ruaka by various stakeholders or various land agents and how much they're selling a piece of land for. So if you find out that an acre of land in whichever area you're interested in is perhaps 1 million, then if you're buying 10 acres, you would know about 10 million is what it should be sold for. Then in most cases, if you're buying property from an individual, you can be able to negotiate on the terms. This includes how you're going to be able to pay. Is it in 3 installments? Is it 10% deposit, then in 3 other installments, or 2 or 1? You would be able to find out whether you'll be able to purchase the property as it is, or with, if there are things that have to be removed, if it's a house, for example. You will find that when you're buying off-plan apartments, you will not be able to negotiate on these terms. Usually they are standard, but we have been able to push some developers to give some leeway to our clients of the same. Then you'll conduct a thorough due diligence, and in the next slide, we will be able to go through what this entails. In the cases where there is an offer letter provided, then this is the point, once you've done the 3 stages before that, you will sign the offer letter. So due diligence in terms of purchasing a property is such as, it's you ensuring that the documents that are before you are exactly the same as what are in the various registries. So the first thing that I'd want to say is you will ask the vendor, the person selling you the property, to give you a copy of the title. You'd also ask them to give you their IDs. And the first search that you would do is a normal land registry search. And in this search, in the land registry, where you get a certificate of official search, you're just confirming that the details of the document that you have received are the same as the document that is there with the registrar. You have, then after that, there's a company registry search. Usually this is for where you are buying property from a company. You will get a CR12. The advocate who is assisting you would be able to get this for you. Here you'll be able to confirm companies registered, who are the directors of the company, majority shareholding of the company, who would you sue in case of anything that would happen in terms of this purchase that you're about to do. In the converse of this, where you're buying a property from an individual, we insist that you do a search at the registrar of persons. This search is usually done by advocates. They write a letter to the registrar and to confirm the details that are in the ID card that was provided to you are similar with the ones that are there. As you know, especially for us Kenyans, so many of us have similar names. So therefore, you ensure that the names that you have and the ID number and the details are authenticated and are correct before you continue with the purchase that you're about to do. After that, your advocate can be able to do a court records search. In this search, you're going to search the title number, ensure that there are no cases against that particular title. You could also do a search against the company and the individual to ensure that they also do not have cases against them. We know there's some notorious companies that sell property, and once you find those cases against them, then we would advise that you do not purchase from them. Then from there, you do a county registry search. And in the county registry search, you would be able to find out the rates of the property. And if they're in arrears, therefore, you would ask the vendor to ensure that they pay for the same. Also, in a county registry search, you'd find out if a property is under controlled development. Therefore, Mr. Mapesa would be told that he cannot build up this complex that he wants to do. And perhaps in some areas, for example, in Lavington, you would be told that the apartment complex cannot go above 4 or 5 flights of stairs. Then from there, you would do a probate registry search, and this can be done at the same time with the county search. We know for a fact that many Kenyans acquire property from their parents through succession. And sometimes this succession process can be contentious, and you find that perhaps you are about to contract with someone who is a beneficiary, yet they are not even the administrator of the property. And therefore, when you do a probate registry search, if the process hasn't gotten to the point where you can be able to find out all the records from the court, then you would ask them to give you copies of the documents that were served and what were filed in court. If you can find the certificate of confirmation of grant or the grant documents, then you'll be able to confirm, this property belongs to this person, and so is the person who is being the beneficiary of the property, and therefore they're competent to sell this property to you, and that the process is complete, and that there are no other people who are claiming rights over the same property. So as you can see from the list, there are 2 searches that I have left behind, and which are the most critical of this process. That is the search at the Survey of Kenya and the green card search. Let us begin with the search at the Survey of Kenya. And Stella mentioned a document called the Registry Index Map. And when Stella was speaking, she said that the title number is as unique as the ID number is to a Kenya, or the same thing to do with the passport number. And if you've applied for a passport and if you have applied for a Kenyan ID, you know that you will always present your birth certificate so that you can be able to be granted this ID or this passport that you require. And I'm sure the same is there for whichever country you are in, whether in the US or in Canada. Now, the registry index map is the same as, I would equate it to the birth certificate of an individual. It's the one that gives birth to the property number that is there. Why is that? It is maintained by the Director of Survey at the Survey of Kenya. It's supposed to be the most accurate document. It is so accurate because your title number is not only indicated on the actual page, but on the 3 pages before and 3 pages after. And this ensures that when someone goes and even plucks out, if there's any corruption to be done and someone plucks out a page, the other pages would then support this, the numbers that are there in the registry index map. When you saw the title deeds that we had, the registry index map number is written at the top. And therefore, this search is quite important because it then supports the information that you saw on the title deed. The green card search, on the other hand, the green card is the document that perhaps is the beginning of the file that you have at the land registry. And usually, if you do a search and you find that you can't find the green card, you would be advised not to buy that property because that property might have some fraudulent transactions on it. So the green card search then ensures that the property that you're buying is legitimate, and that the information that you see on the search that you did, and we will go through the search in the next slide, is the same as that is in the green card. On this slide now, we will be able to, on this slide, we just have an example of how the certificate of search would look. At the top, you have the title number, you have the search number, then you have the date on which, the date at which the search was done, the nature of the title, is it absolute, is it freehold or is it leasehold? You have the approximate area. Then you have the proprietorship section. In this section, then you have the name and address of the proprietor. You have the inhibitions. Are there cautions on the property? Are there restrictions on the property? And Stella had been able to highlight some of these examples of what a caution would be. In this case, in a caution, we would not be allowed to transfer or do anything on the property without telling the cautioner. The restrictions that would be there, any inhibitions that would be on the property. Then there's an encumbrance section. In the encumbrance section, if there is any charges on the property, and for example, in this one is the charge from Cooperative Bank worth 2.3 million. At the bottom of the certificate of official search, then you will be able to also see the date on which the search was done. So at this juncture, we would want to present to you the risks of owning property while in the diaspora. What are some of the things that you would be able to look out for for those of you who already own property while abroad in Kenya? The first is adverse possession. So adverse possession is the process by which a person goes onto your property as a squatter. So you could buy property in Kenya, and if you're not able to fence this property, it lays there, it is fallow, no one is going to the property. Kenyans are industrious in nature. You will find people will come on your property. They will build houses. Some will have, dukas on top of your property. And lo and behold, after 12 years, you find that these people are claiming that they own the property and your property would go. And most of the properties that have gone through adverse possession sometimes there's a linkage to the owner being abroad. Because once you're abroad, and sometimes you've brought property, and because of whatever you've happened to you before, you find that you don't even want to inform some of your relatives. What have we advised our clients? To fence their property, to put CCTV on their property, and to ensure that there are no squatters on their property. And in case there are, to contract an advocate early enough, and lawyers such as NNW, to be able to remove these squatters from that property using the legal processes that are provided to us. Unpaid rates and rent. Kenyans have this thing of putting off paying their rates and rent, especially because they wait for waivers. If your rent and rates stay in arrears for a very long time, the government can be able to take back your property because of unpaid, especially because of unpaid rent. And I know the title we saw had a small amount, but there are properties now that are going up to 100,000 Kenya shillings per year as the rent payable. Therefore, it is prudent to ensure that this money is paid on time every year so that you can be able to remain on top of things and not lose your property because of unpaid rent and rent. Disposal without knowledge. As I had alluded, Kenyans are industrious in nature. You'll find that a Kenyan will be able to go to River Road, get a copy of your title, get an ID similar to yours, and be able to do 1, 2, 3 things and be able to dispose of your property. Or if you're not in possession of your title while abroad, you find that someone would be able to come and take your title deed and sell it off. You must ensure that if you're abroad, you could be able to keep your title safe in Kenya through advocates or through the bank. And also ensure that you are aware of how your property is doing. When you come to visit in the country, go and look at your property, ensure that it is well. Stella talked about misutilization of funds. This is where you find that you're sending money to Kenya for a property to be purchased or to be developed, yet a person is not doing this. We have talked about being able to deal with certified professionals to ensure that even in the case where someone does something wrong, you can be able to sue this person as compared to dealing with your family and friends who you might not be able to take anywhere in case they utilize your funds for other purposes. Dealing with fraudsters is very big, and there are many fake land sellers who are all over the place, including those Facebook groups and WhatsApp messages, someone saying that they're selling property here and there. Ensure that you are able to verify the person you're dealing with before you purchase property. I will give it back to Stella to be able to take us to introduce the second stage of of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Edward, for that presentation. Great. So we've understood all, or rather we now understand all the things that we now need to deal with when it comes to the pre-contractual stage and the due diligence that is expected on your end whenever you're thinking of purchasing a property. So you have then gone and satisfied yourself that everything is A1 when it comes to the size, the location, the legitimacy of the owner, the legitimacy of the property. It's not a river road title, as Edward has put it. Now you want to put pen to paper. How do we go about that? Maureen Jeru will take us through that step.
Thank you for the introduction, Stella. My name is Maureen Jeru, an associate in the Real Estate and Commercial Department at MMW. I'll be taking you through the contractual stage in property acquisition. So as discussed by Edward, purchase of land involves undertaking a number of processes, and key among them is conducting due diligence over the property. So what happens after you've conducted due diligence over your property? The parties will now proceed to negotiate on the purchase price and other terms of the purchase, hence forming a document called the sale agreement. But before delving into the particulars and the salient features of a sale agreement, we'd want to look at methods by which a buyer can own property. We have the cash buyer and the financed buyer. So a cash buyer is an individual who buys property outright using their own funds without relying on a bank to purchase the property, to purchase the finance of the property, to finance the purchase of the property, sorry. Then we have the financed buyer, who obviously will now rely on cooperative bank to finance or to advance a mortgage loan so as to be able to acquire the property. So once you're done with the due diligence, you need to identify on which part you fall when it comes to the types of buyers. However, the common elements among the two types of buyers is that there must be a contract, which is known as a sale agreement. So a sale agreement in relation to land is a contract for the sale of land which must be in writing. Quite obviously, this will make it possible and easier to enforce the terms in case of breach by any party. So I'll delve directly to the sale agreement and discuss the salient features. So the agreement acts to protect the purchaser and the seller's interest and to ensure that all parties get what they rightfully deserve without getting duped. It also, as stated earlier, ensures enforceability in the event of fraud or in the event one party defaults on their obligations. So first, the key elements or the key salient feature in an agreement would be the description of the parties. So you must identify both the buyer and the purchaser, and this will include their full names, their ID number, the postal address of all the parties. And in most cases, for the purchaser especially, these are the details that will be reflected on the title deed after the transfer. We also go to the particulars of the property, whereby you need to identify the title number, the acreage, the area where the property is situated. So in our case scenario, we have Mr. Mapesa, who is purchasing 10 acres of property. This must be reflected here because we don't want a situation whereby the agreement only states that you're buying perhaps 5 acres while you're paying for the 10 acres because you're only buying a portion of the property and not the entire property. After the description of the parties and of the property, we now go to the cost element, which is a purchase price. You need to reflect the purchase price as agreed upon with the vendor or the seller of the property. If you've entered into a payment plan, you need to reflect the amounts payable and on which date. If the amount is financed by, let's say, cooperative bank, this needs to come out clearly as to what amount is being financed, the deposit that is being paid towards settlement of the purchase price, which is a standard percentage of 10%, but parties could agree to have it higher or lower than that. You also need to reflect the account numbers to which the purchase price will be paid. The other salient feature would be the completion date. This is a very, very vital clause in a sale agreement because essentially it will outline the steps and the conditions that must be met for the sale transaction to be considered as complete. So in a normal purchase or whereby the purchase is not being financed, you'll find that the seller exchanges documents, which I'll be looking at a later stage in the same sale agreement. Or maybe you could just scroll down to clause number 7, whereby at the completion stage in a normal transaction, you now exchange the funds with the original title deed, with the transfer documents signed by the seller, with a certified copy of the identification documents for the seller. You also need to obtain the spousal consent from the seller if the property is matrimonial property or if the property was acquired during the subsistence of the marriage. You also need to obtain the consent from the Land Control Board consent. As Edward alluded to, you must obtain the RIM. You need to ensure that the seller has paid for the capital gains tax. You need a sketch map of the property because you will be conducting valuation over the property at the point of the transfer. You also need to ensure that the seller has any land rates or land rents payable on the property and any other documentation that should be required to effect the transfer. So after being provided with the documents, we have the other clause, which is the termination clause, or a clause that we refer to as a failure to complete. This is a provision that outlines the circumstances under which either party can terminate or cancel the agreement before the completion of the sale. So for instance, if the seller is not able to hand over the completion documents, then the buyer can invoke this clause and request for the deposits and demand actually for the deposit that had already been paid towards settlement of the purchase price. Then if the buyer is not able to complete the transaction, and for the buyer, it's majorly payment of the purchase price, then they can forfeit the deposit that was paid, or the seller and the buyer could agree on an amount that will be forfeited in the event the buyer is unable to complete the transaction. So this clause ensures that both parties have a very clear understanding of their rights and obligations in the event of termination, because you don't want to breach any covenant in the agreement, then you come claiming that you did not know the repercussions to that. Then we have the warranties clause under the agreement, which majorly deals with the promises or assurances that the seller gives the vendor. So for example, the seller can give the purchaser a warranty that the property is not on riparian land. But this does not mean that you do not conduct your due diligence over the property, because it is a crucial element, as Edward discussed, for a buyer to conduct due diligence. We have a principle called the caveat emptor, which is the buyer beware. You cannot go to court later on and claim that you are not aware that the property was encumbered or the property was on riparian land, because you're obligated under the law to conduct due diligence in as much as the seller is giving you warranties. Then we have the condition of the property. This is whereby the seller confirms whether the property is occupied or not, whether the property is encumbered or not, Generally, it's the condition of the property. Again, prior to even signing the documents, you need to conduct your due diligence. Visit the property physically, do a site visit, ensure that the property is vacant, ensure that there are no squatters on your property, because even if it's stated that in the agreement that the property is in vacant possession, you still have to actually confirm that and confirm the situation on the ground. The other clause would be, the other vital clause would be the termination clause. This is a provision in agreement that outlines the circumstances under which either party can terminate or cancel the agreement before completion of the sale. It also provides the procedures before the completion and the relationship between the buyer and the seller, ensuring that both parties understand their rights and obligations in the event of termination. So if you paid a deposit, what happens when you terminate the agreement? Or what happens, does the seller refund the deposit, or do you forfeit the deposit? Then the other clause would be the dispute resolution clause. In the event there's a misunderstanding or a conflict as to the interpretation of any clause in the agreement, how do you go about resolving it? And the other elements that you need to be on the lookout for is the execution page. Stella had already discussed about the key players in a transaction. So you need to ensure that each party executes the agreement in the presence of an advocate with a current practicing certificate. So after executing the sale agreement, we now go to the next step, which is registration. Registration of the transfer, but first I want us to look at how a transfer form would look like. Let's zoom in. So you must identify and ensure that the title number as reflected on the original title deed is a title number that is noted on the transfer form. The details of the seller and the purchaser must be accurate on the transfer form because they are the same details that will be reflected on the title deed. You need to ensure that the consideration is reflected on the transfer, because you note that when you're going to conduct valuation of over the property, so that you can ascertain the stamp duty payable, in most cases, the valuers will rely on the purchase price indicated on the transfer document. You also need to indicate the holding of the property. Is it a leasehold property or is it a freehold property? Then you need to ensure that all parties execute the agreement and the agreement is signed in the presence of an advocate, so that in the event there's a dispute as to ownership of the property in future, the advocate could actually appear as a witness and attest to the fact that a certain individual appeared before them. Then once you've signed and once you've lodged the document, the registrar must endorse the transfer document. This will ideally help you show that you actually underwent through the procedures of underwent through the set out procedure of acquiring the property. Then after registration, you conduct a post-registration search, as was discussed by Edward. This will now show that in the records that are held by the Ministry of Lands actually show that you are the owner of the property. Then after concluding on the contractual stage, you now go to the registration stage, which I've already talked about, which is also known as the completion stage. Completion differs depending on the nature of the transaction. If the transaction is financed, you find that banks will not disburse the balance of the purchase price up until when the transfer is registered and when the charge is registered in the bank's favor. Then, and this is where the undertakings come into play, which is basically a promise between the seller and the vendor, whereby the advocates come into play and issue a promise whereby the bank's advocate issues an undertaking to the seller's advocate, promising that upon registration of the transfer and upon registration of the charge, then the funds will be remitted directly to the vendor. Then we have the completion whereby we do it by exchange of documents. This is for cash buyers. You pay the full purchase price in exchange for the completion documents as discussed in the sale agreement. Then we have the off-plan purchasers. Now for off-plan purchasers, which is very, very common in Kenya, whereby you actually buy your apartments off the plan, and their purchase price is utilized to develop the entire project, the apartment. So for off-plan, you find that the completion stage differs. The first completion in an off-plan would be the agreed timeline in the sale agreement, which falls within a year or even 2 years after the beginning of the project. Then we have completion when you're issued with a certificate of practical completion by the county government. Then we have by registration of the transfer. We've already discussed on how a transfer form should look like. So completion occurs when you've actually registered the transfer and the title deed is issued in your name. Then you're able to conduct a search and ascertain that the records held by the Ministry of Land indicates that you're the rightful owner over the property. I'll now hand over to Stella to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Maureen Gerald, for that presentation that has taken us through the various salient terms of a sale agreement, transfer, and what to look out for, particularly when you're now at the contractual stage. So that before you put pen to paper, before you execute that sale agreement, you make sure that your interests are actually protected. So it may not be easy for you to go through the entire sale agreement, but at least now you know what to look out for. At the beginning of this presentation, I said that there's always a disillusion that the purchase price is the only cost that will be incurred. However, over and above the purchase price, there are other incidental costs that go with purchasing a property or disposing a property. Melissa Wanjiru will actually take us through that process. Melissa, go for it.
Okay, thank you, Stella. As Stella has stated, as a purchaser or if you're being financed, there are other costs apart from the purchase price, and we have broken it down for you. So one, you have conducting a search. We have already explained the importance of conducting a search. So at the point of conducting a search, we have two searches that we do. We have the pre-registration search. So this is before you want to buy a property and you want to ascertain who the owner is. And then you have the post-registration, that after registration, that your interests have been recorded in the ministry. So this costs about 1,000 shillings, and it takes a maximum of 2 days. And then we have your LCB. Remember when Stella had said, when we are dealing with agricultural land, it's important to present yourself before the Land Control Board. And we have two types of consents we get. So we have the LCB consent to transfer, and where the purchase price is being financed, you have the LCB to charge. And then, so this each costs around 11,000 shillings to 20,000 shillings, depending on the registry. And it takes about 3 days. The maximum is usually 3 days. And then you have your registration fees. So you have your transfer that has been executed or your charge, and now you're presenting it to the land registrar who conducts the registration. At the point of concluding the registration, there's usually a fee that we pay to the land registrar, and this costs about 3,000 to 4,000, and registration takes about 7 days. And then you have your valuation. So where you have a transfer, there's usually a process where the valuer will go to the property, inspect the property in order to ascertain the value of the property. So this, after the value has gone to the property, ascertain the value, this is what will inform what stamp duty will be paid upon transfer. And when the valuer goes to value, they do a report. And after they do a report, we are required to pay Kenyan shillings 10,000. And the valuation report is usually ready within 3 days. And then you have your stamp duty. So where there's a transfer, it depends on where the property is. So you'll find that sometimes where a property is within a municipality, the stamp duty is usually higher. So you have 4% for properties within a municipality, but you have 2% where the properties is outside the municipality. And where the purchase price is being financed, you have stamp duty on charge, which is 0.1% of the charge amount. And then you have your capital gains tax. So capital gains tax is a tax that is taxed upon the net gain value. So let's say Robert Mapesa had bought, let's say John is selling to Robert Mapesa. John had bought this property in 2019. He had bought it at maybe 1 million, and now he's selling it to Robert Mapesa at 10 million. So you see the property has accrued some value. So that is the difference between the 10 million and 1 million, which is 9 million, is what is taxed. And the tax is 15%. So it will be 15% of the 9 million. And this tax is usually catered for by the seller. So John will be the one who will pay the capital gains tax. And if, say, John had incurred other expenses during the selling of the property, maybe he had engaged some advocates, he had maybe fenced his property, he had incurred some costs during that process, he'll be able to subtract that from the capital gains. And yes, so this is usually takes about 24 hours. And so that comes to the end of my part of my presentation, and I'll give it back to Stella. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm sure that offers insight as to, over and above the purchase price, what costs you are likely to incur. Now, not all property is actually necessarily just bare land or necessarily your usual bungalows or maisonettes. Sometimes you may be interested in purchasing apartments, blocks of apartments, some that are complete, some that are off-plan. So with these properties, they are actually known as the sectional properties. That is to say, you're owning a section, just like this name suggests, of that particular property. Michael Muya will now take us on sectional properties, what to look out for, so that then you are a better purchaser. Michael?
Thank you, Stella. As I've been introduced, my name is Michael Moya. I'm a lawyer at the real estate department, and I will take you through the next part of this presentation, which is on ownership of sectional properties. So I think it will be important first to understand what sectional property is and to be able to differentiate it from ownership of any other kind of property, especially land. And with that, we will begin with maybe a bit of a background where people who wanted, if a person wanted to own an apartment in the previous regime, they would get something called a long-term lease. So a developer who developed apartments and selling to purchasers units of those apartments, the purchasers would get a long-term lease. But now in the new regime, through the Sectional Properties Act that was enacted in 2020, the purchasers now are able to get something called a sectional title. And this basically means that the purchaser will have title to that individual apartment. And that is a major difference between ownership of sectional property and ownership of land. So another very important feature of ownership of sectional property is the management corporation. So once the purchasers buy the individual units or the individual apartments, they all come together to form the management corporation. And the management corporation will be in charge of managing the common areas, for example, the pool areas or the parking area or the gym if there is one, or even the lift, so that the apartments are kept in good order and every owner of an apartment in that block or in that development has a share in the affairs or in the management of the development. So after understanding the nature and the features of ownership of sectional property, it will be important now to know what do you look out for when you're purchasing a section of property. And it is very important for a buyer or a purchaser of a section of property to be aware of the sale agreement, for example. What are the terms? Are they favorable for the purchaser? What are the terms of payment? What is the purchase price? And then also, if the sectional unit, that is the apartment, has been registered and there is already an existing sectional title, you will need to see that sectional title in order to determine its legitimacy. Also, the bylaws of the management corporation, because each development has its own management corporation, which runs its own affairs, and they have their own bylaws. So you'll need to see what are the bylaws of this management corporation you're buying into, and what are you able to adhere to the rules under these bylaws. So those are some of the, maybe the documents that you would need to be keen on when buying a section of property. There are also common situations where the developer of these apartments had taken a loan and had charged that land where the development has been erected, and had taken a loan in order maybe to develop those particular apartments. And it is very important for you to find out what is the charge amount that the developer has taken, because at the end of it all, the encumbrances that were noted on the mother title, that is the title of the land where the development has been set up, will be transferred to the sectional title. So it is important to understand what is the charge amount, what amount is due, what interest will be paid on that amount, and what is the term of that loan, so that you are able to keep tabs of the encumbrances that are registered against your title. Lastly, for a person maybe who is living abroad and they are not currently in the country and they have a section of property that they own, they may want to rent it out and earn something even though they are not present to occupy the property that they own. And that is very much possible. The Act, the Sectional Properties Act, and even other laws allow for a sectional property owner to rent the property out, but they would have first to notify the management corporation so that the management corporation knows that the sectional property is being rented, the tenant who is occupying that property, and they are able to control the affairs of such kind of an arrangement. I think that is a basic summary of ownership of sectional properties. If you have any queries, you can just write them in the chat. I would be glad together with the team to answer any questions. Thank you so much. I'll hand it over back to Stella.
Thank you, Michael, for that wonderful presentation. I suppose now you know what to look out for when you're buying a particular apartment or a flat, whatever the case may be. Now, I hope, or I may be sure, maybe not quite, that you now know we have this platform known as the ASISASA platform. ASISASA platform came into Kenya, I think around 2019, 2020, and has been taking some semblance of ownership, but basically it's to deal with digitization of our lands registries. We are just going to briefly touch on this because it is still at its very nascent stages. It has not taken off to most parts of the country. It's actually still in Nairobi. Edward is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Stella, for the introduction. Thank you, Stella, for the introduction.
Let us go through the ASISASA platform. Now, ASISASA, as Stella has said, was introduced in Kenya well in 2020. This platform was introduced as the world was going digital. The lands registry in Kenya did not want to be left behind. AdhiSasa is created and backed by blockchain technology, which means that once your title is verified on AdhiSasa, you are secure with the fact that your property is legitimate. This is because they introduced the platform in Nairobi, and it was only for Nairobi properties. The first step that was done is something that we call conversion. Conversion was the process of taking all titles in Nairobi and putting them under one regime. So the regime is the Nairobi block regime. And for your information, if you're abroad and you own a title in Nairobi, you actually should be going through this conversion process. You have a new title number and you will require to have an account on AdhiSasa. How is an AdhiSasa account created? You require to have your ID. Using your ID, and if you need to have your ID, you need to have an email address, and you need to have a Kenyan mobile number. With these three things, you'll be able to set up your account. They'll need a photograph that will be used for all transactions. And once you set up your account and get your OTP, that's the one-time password, both on your email and on your mobile number, you'll be able to log in. And we have assisted many clients in opening AdhiSasa accounts. Then after that, you will do verification, and verification is to ensure that the title that you have is verified. We talked so much about the Survey of Kenya. We talked so much about the registrar and the registries in Kenya, that the land registers, that is. Now for Nairobi properties, you'll be able to go through verification, and this is a 5-step process where various departments are able to verify that the information that is there is legitimate and is true. At the end of the verification process, you'll be able to transact your property on the AdhiSasa platform. Again, as I've said, it only affects Nairobi properties as at now, and you can only transact on the platform. So the difference between this platform and a normal registry transfer process is that you can only do one thing, one step at a time. The beauty of it is that the information there is legitimate and that you can trust it. MMW, we are proud to say that we are the first law firm in Kenya to be able to do a full transaction on AdhiSasa. And as you know, of course, with anything new, there's always those who are against it. And there are many people who are against this platform and against technology because, of course, of the benefits that they get using the manual system. But we are pro going digital, and we are supporting this platform. And as Stella said, at some point, we have done quite a number of transactions, even in this year. Yes, the only thing that we'll say for sure is that we cannot confirm the timelines when it comes to the AdhiSasa platform. Some transactions will take 2 weeks, some transactions will take 2 months. It highly depends on the verification process and the legitimacy of the documents in the various departments that are required to verify your property. But once verified, usually the process will move. It also depends on the players that you have. Do they know how to sign on the platform? Do they know how to log in? Are they keeping the right timelines? Are they sharing the right information? But other than that, this is the AdhiSasa platform. It is the future. It is where it is going to go. The ministry wants to take it to other counties. And we are sure that once it's up and running, it will be a good system that will be able to change the way we transact our land in Kenya. Back to you, Stella.
Thank you so much, Edward. And now we have reached the end of our presentation. So I hope you've actually gotten time to take out some key salient features of this conversation, particularly due diligence. Always do your due diligence. Always ask for the title. Remember the things that we've said. What should you look out for when you're looking at a particular title? The sale agreement, what exactly are you considering your salient terms, as Maureen Jeru has said? With the land registries, the stakeholders have stated. Purchase price and cost, as Melissa has mentioned, what do you also look out for? The pre-contractual requirements, as Edward has mentioned, exactly what do you need to remember? There are certain questions, so we've said Our work or our services is to ensure that you have good representation, that we consult you, that you're able to consult us, or we are your consultants and legal partners through this journey. And similarly, we are able to offer 12-hour perfection services, particularly in terms of securitization. If you're borrowing a facility from the bank and you need assistance with that as well, you can always reach out to that. Now to the Q&A, I've seen there's a question that has been asked. Are sectional properties titles held indefinitely? Michael, you can take that up.
Thank you. So Mr. Simon K wants to know whether sectional properties are held indefinitely. And I'll just go straight and answer it by saying that it depends on the type of title to property that sectional unit arises. And what do I mean by this? And maybe I can make reference to our case scenario on Robert Mapesa. So Robert Mapesa, for example, buys a freehold property. So he gets a certificate of title. Then on that freehold property, he erects apartments. And now he sells these apartments as sectional units. So the purchasers of these sectional apartments will get certificates of title because the particular property that they have, that the developments have been developed on, is a freehold property that is held under a certificate of title. In another case scenario, or in a different scenario, where Robert Mapesa is a lessee. So for example, he buys a property in the Nairobi area. And in the Nairobi area, he can only lease from the government. So he gets a certificate of lease and he develops proper apartments on that property that he has leased. Then he sells them as units, sectional units. So each purchaser will now get a certificate of lease. So it can be two instances. You can either hold them indefinitely if the property onto which the sectional units have been registered is held indefinitely, or if the property where the apartments have been developed is held under a lease, then you will not hold them indefinitely. You will get a certificate of lease, which has a definite term that is written clearly, as we saw on the certificate of lease, and it will have to be renewed by the person who has now taken that sectional sectional title under a certificate of lease. So it can be either a certificate of title, which is held for indefinitely, or a certificate of lease, which is held under a definite term.
I see Simon says that he has been answered. Thank you so much for your time. Someone else has a question, Geoffrey. What happens when the lawyers are the problem in the transaction? E.g., hold and run? That just moved fast. What happens when the lawyers are the problem in the transaction? They hold and run with your money and not pay the seller. Reporting to LSK does not really get any results. Okay, first, let me say, Geoffrey, I'm so sorry that you have actually gone through that. And I can tell you that is not something you would experience with MMW. I will answer a bit of that, and then I can have Edward also tackle a bit of it. Yes. So what we have seen in the past, and this is something that would happen a lot, and it still perhaps does happen, is that we have seen now clients taking their lawyers to court, so then they can have the particular fund released. Because you're right, sometimes LSK does not get the work done as fast as you want it, particularly where now the transaction is complete, but the funds have not been released to the vendor. And then now the vendor is hounding you because they're saying, we've transferred the property to you, where's our money? And I have had incidences where there are lawyers who've just gone mute, or they block you, or they blue tick you. Particularly being in the diaspora, I can imagine how frustrating that can be, because you really can't walk into the advocate's office. That puts you rather at a disadvantaged space. So one of the things that you can do is Instead of pushing with LSK and doing your demand letters, and as unfortunate as this may be, you may just need to actually go to court and sue your lawyer or your erstwhile lawyer for the funds to be released. Edward, do you have anything else to add on that? Because that is what I have done in my experience.
Stella, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Sorry. Thank you, Stella. Over and above this, and just to elaborate further, usually there are two complaint systems in Kenya for being able to say that your advocate has, acted not in the right manner. So what you're speaking about through this case, the advocate's disciplinary committee. And of course, I'll say this as an advocate, and also sometimes as professionals in general. For example, even if you go and sue a doctor and take them before their own disciplinary committee, they usually protect their own. So the second channel that you can use, which is usually less known, is through the Attorney General's office. There's an Advocates Complaints Commission that you can be able to also take this advocate to. And there have been some clients who've gotten reprieve through this process. So over and above step one, which is what Stella has provided for, in terms of going to court and going through the contractual basis between you and your advocate, you could also take them to the Advocates Complaints Commission.
Thank you so much, Edward. Oh, by the way, just so that you know, we have put up our email and our website and our cell number, which is on WhatsApp, that you can reach out to us. So please do take a screenshot or a picture or an image of that particular of those particular details. Mr. Lioko, a friend's brother has been living at his property for many years. How can this affect his and him in the future, in the event that the brother claims that the property belongs to him? So this is on adverse possession. Edward, you had dealt with adverse possession. You can pick that.
Thank you, Stella. Yes, Mr. Lioko, you should advise your friend. The main issue with adverse possession is usually that the owner of the property had never come to claim their ownership over the property. So as something as simple as having a basic lease agreement, it doesn't need to have any terms of payment or that sort of thing. And even in the era of WhatsApp messages or text messages, it is just ensuring that the brother makes it clearly known that so your friend's brother make it clearly known to his brother. So let's call them John and Peter. So if your friend is John, then John telling Peter that this is my property, and the best way to do this could be a very basic lease agreement. I think would be able to do it. The terms could be very simple, even if it's a 3-pager. Just showing that we're giving you. I'm giving you the right to be on my property. You could perhaps pay me, very minimal or nothing at all. But something that shows that the brother knows, that Peter knows that the property is owned by John.
There's also a separate question, and I think this is actually addressed to the Beatrice and Co. For treasury bills and bonds, if the government was to be overthrown and probably the military takes over, would your customer who have invested be affected in any way? What about if the military stayed in power? Would I be affected? Beatrice?
Thank you, Stella. I would like John to take that. John, please answer that.
Thank you, Beatrice.
Beatrice.
Thank you, Beatrice.
Okay, there seems to be no response from anyone from Beatrice's side or Cooperative Bank.
Stella, I don't know whether you can hear us.
I honestly cannot answer that question because we do not hold any investments for any clients. Maybe she'll see that and answer it later. I suppose that marks the end of this presentation. Oh, okay.
Okay, on that question, what I can say is For treasury bills and bonds, they are, yes, they are government securities. And one thing is that you are assured of your deposit or of your investment. So at no one time you can lose what you have invested, because actually what happens is once like for a bond, you get like every year you get the coupons 2 times. So you be assured regardless of what happens in any government, you'll be assured that your investment is safe and you'll always be able to get it back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's also a question I have seen from, let me just scroll to that. Kenny, I would like to buy a piece of land in Kitengela, and COP have linked me up with a SACCO that does the selling process. I'm told the titles are ready, but the thing is I'm not in Kenya at the moment. What is the process? I suppose our training has now taken you through the process, but we have shared our email, we have shared our details. So please feel free to reach out to us so that then we can walk you in terms of doing the searches for you to ensure that the SACCO that is selling the property is the actual owner. We can review the sale agreements for you and then walk you through the transfer of the property from start to finish. Patrick, is there anything like zoning in Kenya? Are there places where you can only build residential, single-family homes, apartments, or commercial structures? Yes. Oh, yes. But I will let Edward answer that question.
Thank you so much. Yes, there is zoning in Kenya. Sorry, there is zoning in Kenya. First, basically, you would know there's what we classify as agricultural land, and then there's what is classified as commercial land. So traditionally, most of the land that was what you'd call up country, or where you find, like your grandparents living, previously would all be agricultural land. Then there's a process that came in that is called change of user, and it would then change the land. Now, there are various users. What you're calling zoning is what we call users. Then you'd find that there's single dwelling user, which allows only for one, like one house and perhaps that someone's quarter. Then you could find a mixed dwelling. You could find commercial. This is usually, if you'll find commercial properties where you can find an apartment. If you come to Kenya, you'll find apartments where on the lower floor, you will find there, again, there are like shops and such things, and then upper floors are actually homes. Then you'd find where there's different zoning, where you'd find now there's only, for example, the floors can go up to 5 floors. You can't take it higher than that. So those would be zoning laws. Yeah, like near airports, for example. Yeah, so there's various zoning, but I think the word that we use, there are zones, but also what we call users. And so the property would then limit which user you would use, and the search that would be done at the county would be able to give you which user and which zone the property falls under.
Thank you, Edward. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of a matter that we are handling, because if you look at what Konza Technopolis or Konza City is doing, is that it has created a 10-kilometer buffer zone around the Technopolis, to the effect that anyone who is trying to develop that particular property has to seek approval from Konza Technopolis. So yes, zoning is something that's very important. And particularly if you hear that there's a likelihood of zoning in your area, or you own a particular property and there's likelihood of zoning, it's very important that you participate, so that then you do not fall in an instance where now your development and investment has to be controlled. Dennis Amolo had asked, how long does legal processing take in purchasing property? Some of our vendors are always anxious on the length of time before they receive their money. Particularly for out of station, or what we call out of Nairobi properties, it takes 30 days maximum, because I mean your search takes 1-2 days. If you've gotten a purchaser who is not being financed as a cash purchaser, the process is much faster. Nairobi may take maybe 60 days or longer, but we have been known to even finish transactions within 14 days, 21 days. So that is not something that should worry you, particularly if you have a lawyer who understands land registries, because there's a real wealth of knowledge when it comes to land registries and land networks, because that's now what helps in processing land transactions, making land transactions faster. Do you have houses for sale in Nairobi? Beatrice says, yes, we do. Visit our property hub. Okay. Can we email the recording for this session? Beatrice has said that will be emailed. I think that marks the end of our presentation and all the questions. Thank you for all of you who have stayed on board and have been with us. It's now 3:30 a.m. Kenyan time. It's been a real pleasure to have your attention, to see your questions, your participation, being patient with us as we have been with you as well. We hope that we will get to interact. Like I said, we have shared our email, which is smuragori@mmw.legal, info@mmw.legal. Our website is www.mmw.legal. We've also shared our number, which is +254 723 608 352, which is also accessible on WhatsApp. My team, Edward, Maureen, Melissa, Michael, and myself have nothing but gratitude, and we hope we'll also get to have shared opportunities where we can work together, where we can offer you guidance. If you have a transaction that is stuck, feel free to reach out to us. If, like the gentleman who said has a lawyer who's giving him problems, please let us help you solve that issue as well. Thank you and good night. Beatrice, over to you.
Thank you, Stella and team, for that quite informative session. What I can assure our customers is that your investment, as we work together with MMW Advocates LLP, your investments are well taken care of. We always ensure that you're not compromised in any way. So we have come to the end of the presentation. I'll be keen to share the presentation recording for your reference. And should you have any question at all, MMW have shared their contacts. You also have our contact as well. We are just a call or an email away. So feel free to engage us even after this. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like Ivy to give us a closing prayer so that we can release the participants. Ivy, please pray for us. Ivy, I think she's dropped off, but let me pray. Thank you, Father, for these wonderful moments. Thank you for the presentation that you've just had. We pray that you may help us to continue engaging with our customers and guiding them and working together as a team. We surrender the rest of the evening and also the rest of the day unto your able hands. Guide us and may you bless may you meet us all at the various points of our needs. And it is in Jesus' name we pray and give thanks. Amen. Thank you so much.